Good morning, reflectors.
Good morning.
That's right. It's Friday, April 10th, and we're going to do some reflecting / a few new or different defense mechanisms than what Terry Cole presented in her book, Too Much. We had a few more we wanted to share with you. I did want to start off with a tidge of reflection. Not too much, a tidge.
Tidge is okay.
Tidge is okay, good. Also, I got brand new neon pink socks on and they feel so nice. I got some socks out for us to podcast in. So I'm headed off and then I put them on. I said, ooh, I've never worn these before and they feel so nice. You know the feeling of brand new socks?
I love the feeling of brand new socks.
Oh gosh, it is so nice. You know, old comfy socks are good too, but when you got brand new socks, boy, they feel lovely. So I'm sitting here all comfy.
Especially for you, though, they have to be pink or purple for you to really be happy about. So I'm glad.
That's true. That's true.
I didn't even notice your socks, so I'll have to take a peek.
I go for the standard white or black a lot of the times, but you know me, I have a whole drawer full of colorful socks. Hot pink and especially hot neon pink are some of them. In terms of reflecting, I have been on that note. on that note, let's reflect about high functioning codependency. I have been thinking a lot about high functioning codependency, especially as it relates to it being a trauma response.
Okay, so are you going to reflect on the defense mechanisms, or you want to talk about trauma response?
We can reflect on defense mechanisms too, but I just had my heart breaking for all my high functioning codependent people that I care about and every listener that's listening to this. It's heartbreaking what trauma does to us and then what we do in order to manage the overwhelm of trauma. I find that very sad. So I cried a little bit over that because it's heartbreaking to me.
But aren't you happy that we can put a name to it now and we can say, oh, this is what this is? Because once we know that it's something, for many years, those of us that are high functioning codependents, we didn't understand what was going on inside. So I feel very encouraged, not to diminish your concern and empathy and sadness, but I also think it's really important to know that we all know what this is now. Isn't that great?
You are on the right path that when we can put words to what we're experiencing, it can take a lot of the power away. And it's wonderful that maybe there are people out there that have been going through the high functioning codependent life and had no idea. They thought this is just what life is. And it's stressful, it's anxious, it's overwhelming. Oh, there's a word for this? I had no idea. So there can be such joy in that, to finally have words to put to our experiences. And also, I think there can be the joy in that. And also, I feel sad that this world has so much trauma in so many different ways that we as humans have tried to manage the trauma. It could be codependency, it could be drugs and alcohol, it could be overworking, it could be underworking, it could be isolating. There's so many ways that we try to deal with trauma, and it's sad that there is so much trauma in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I also think is there's so much anxiety associated with high functioning codependency. Before you understand that, you think there's something extremely wrong with you. Like, why am I so anxious? And people might even say, well, you don't have that much to be anxious about, but that is the trauma response. So thank you for your understanding of high functioning codependency, and thank you for recognizing that it is a trauma response, and thank you for being so supportive, because that's what the high functioning codependent needs, is support and love and understanding and patience as we learn to let go of that. Today, we had discussed before we pressed go on the podcast that we wanted to bring up, as Ada said, just a few more defense mechanisms that Terry Cole doesn't mention in her book, but that they're real. And the first one, you can call it withdrawal. And that's when we totally remove ourselves from being involved, whether it's family, community, all of that. And what we have done in our work together is we've phrased it this way. There's something called cocooning, and there's something called isolation. Because not all what would look like withdrawing is unhealthy. Sometimes we need to withdraw, and that's what's called cocooning. But then there's also isolating ourselves, and that is not healthy.
That's right. Sometimes we need to take a step back. And when we tell ourselves, you know what, I need some time to think about this, you might step away from the situation, maybe physically, maybe mentally, to withdraw or distance yourself from what is occurring so it's not in your face as you're trying to think. Now, if you're saying, I need time to think, you're cocooning. You're taking that time to go within and saying, well, what do I really feel here? What am I needing? What's alive in me? What's going on?
And it's longer than 15 minutes or an hour.
Right, yes.
This is stepping away. So let's hypothetically say that you're part of your church, and your church happens to be one of those churches with a lot of drama. And you love being part of the church, but also it can suck your emotional capacity dry. And you don't want to not go to church, and you don't want to not be involved, but you need time to think about what's important to you, what your priorities are. Do you need to set some boundaries? Do you just need to rest? Rest is so important. So you can just say, I need some Sundays off to walk my dog and play in the garden and go visit friends and go on a few trips or a hike. That's cocooning, because it's not something that you say, I'm never going back. I'm never seeing anybody. I'm never going to be involved in anything ever again. That would be that isolationist going on. Cocooning is something that's healthy, it's necessary, and it's also something that we don't do. We seem to, especially high-functioning codependents, they just push through. You not like something, you can start feeling that burnout feeling inside. We still need to keep going. We have to show up. And I wanted us, and I brought this to Ada, is I want us, and I wanted us to give you all permission to cocoon if you need to. Because cocooning is something that's healthy. But isolating yourself, saying you're never going to be involved again, that's not healthy. And there's a difference between the two.
Using me as an example, there were times where I was just so overwhelmed, I didn't even say I'm going to take some time to think about it. I just went to my home and didn't really do much. And yes, of course, we're going to tell people it's fine to take a vacation. It's fine just to dink around on your weekends to recover. But there does get to be this point where you're not thinking, you're not recovering or recuperating from stress. You're choosing to be by yourself and maybe engaging in more unhealthy habits because thinking and dealing with what's going on is too much and you're needing more help than you're getting. Vacations are fine. All that's fine.
Stepping away is fine.
Stepping away is fine. You'll know when it starts to cross that line between recovery to just isolating yourself.
And cocooning has an endpoint, and you know it has an endpoint.
That's right.
Isolating, you have no endpoint in mind. You're withdrawing.
You could be there forever.
That's what you think in your mind until someone steps in who loves you and says, this isn't probably a good idea to continue this on. So I wanted just to talk about that today. And then Ada, you and I also want us all to have just a short conversation about attachment, detachment, and non-attachment. So detachment is also a coping strategy. And that's where you show up And in your mind, you just say, well, I don't care. I don't care. I'm going to be detached. And you may not know it, but you're putting a wall around you so that either you don't get hurt.
You don't get emotionally invested.
Yes, you're conserving your emotional capacity in some way. And sometimes we need to do that. But there's a difference between being detached and detachment and non-attachment. So non-attachment is the healthy way, the way we want to go about our lives. Because there's attachment where we're just attached to how everyone feels about
It's
us.
kind of high-functioning codependency.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So there's all this attachment. Oh, she didn't look at me right. So you're attached to that. You're attached to the outcome. It's hard for you to give from your heart because you're always looking for how somebody might be judging you or really being attached to the outcome. But detached takes that pendulum and goes all the way over to the other side. And that really isn't healthy either. We want to find this middle way, which is non-attachment, meaning that you do all the things, but you're not wearing your heart on your sleeve as much. And you're not saying if somebody doesn't accept your love and kindness or your ideas or your contribution the way you had in mind, the way you expected, you don't say, oh, well, just I don't care anyway. That's what detachment would be. You do care, but you don't let it ruin your day. You can acknowledge they didn't appreciate what happened. I give them their autonomy and I still appreciate how I showed up, or I still appreciate what I offered. This is a huge thing because when we get hurt, and especially high functioning codependents, I wanted to bring this up. When we have invested in other people the way we do, and we don't receive the response that we were hoping for, it's not that we have strings attached to everything, but we are putting our heart out there and we are trying to help. And when someone just slaps whatever our gift was away and says, I don't care about that, it can be devastating. And if we can move to this place where instead of saying, well, then I'm not going to help at all, or I'm not going to care at all, or I'm never going to help anybody again, instead of going to that place, it would be a coping strategy, we want to go to the place of non-attachment. I showed up the way I did because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to contribute this way. I wanted to love in this manner. They have a right not to want to accept my gifts. And at the same time, I'm not going to shame myself for giving the gifts. Or I'm not going to say I'm never going to give any other gifts. It might seem like there's a subtle difference, but there's not, because one keeps you in the arena and the other one, you could go into the isolation.
For me, as a professional isolationist, I've had to learn to get into that state of non-attachment because the first thing I want to do is detach. Forget you, forget all of this, get me away from this you know what. That's how I
You
start.
have never said a truer statement. That's exactly how you are.
And that's what I want to do. I want to say, get me away. And I just want to go into my little hidey hole all by myself where I can't get hurt.
That's the isolationist.
Yes.
That is it. But if you, let me ask you a question. Then we'll make this quick, and maybe we have to finish this on Monday.
That would be okay.
Do you feel better as you're learning to come from non-attachment as opposed to going straight to this drastic detachment?
Yes, I do, because it has expanded my sphere of safety. Because if I'm if I'm detached and isolation-y, then my safety is only like in my own home. And then that's kind of a scary thing to feel because, well, if there's only one place in the world you feel safe, that's a pretty lonely place to be.
So it keeps you going. It keeps you involved if you learn this, because it's a boundary. It's a boundary. But it's not denying the love that you want to share and give. And it's not that you are saying, I don't want to be a part of things, because we all have that need for belonging. I would like us to end our podcast today with something to think about for the weekend. That's on page 154 in Terry Cole's book. The very first sentence at the top of the page. Learning to go within and accept, allow, and acknowledge all of our emotions without judgment is key to liberating ourselves from emotional confusion so we can relate from a clear-eyed, honest place. When I read that sentence, I loved it. I was celebrating it because, once again, it's a reminder. We're not going to go to this place of not feeling our feelings. We're not going to go to this place of pushing our feelings down. We're not going to go to the place of denying that we have needs. We're going to spend some time going inside, acknowledging our feelings and needs, and then sharing it with others who are safe. And then doing the work, saying the things we need to say, setting the boundaries we need to set. But it starts with putting on our brave hats and accepting, allowing, and acknowledging all of our feelings. And then I'm going to add on our needs as well.
That will be a great reflection for all of us this weekend. Thank you so much for joining us today and this week. Our day is better because you are part of our day. See you Monday.
See you then.
I'm wanting something more, and I'm ready to begin. A life of happiness awaits me. It starts today when